The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Braveheart, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in this awesome 1995 movie. And joining me today on the panel are Andrew Hermiz. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Michael Denz. Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys.
So before we get started, I want to encourage the listeners, be sure to join the StarQuest fan club by texting StarQuest to 66866. That's StarQuest, to one word, to 66866. And become part of the fan club. We've got lots of stuff going on. We have lots of shows that we're sending out all the time and new shows that we're starting, and you don't want to miss out on anything. Find out everything that's coming up on StarQuest. So let's talk about this movie, though. Braveheart. I got to tell you, I mentioned this before. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love this movie. And I assume for you guys, maybe similar things, right, Andrew?
No doubt. Yeah, I've watched this movie countless times. Not a lot recently. It was more of like, it's one of those movies like akin to like Shawshank Redemption, where whenever it was on cable,
yes, no
matter what point of the movie it's on, you have to watch it.
You stop and watch.
Exactly.
Right.
So, yeah. And considering the length of the movie, you're not always watching the whole thing, but it has that rewatchability factor for sure. And especially with all the iconic scenes and the speeches and all the different battles, I know we'll get into that. But yeah, it's definitely up there. Obviously, that's not a surprise. I think it's a top film on a lot of people's lists. And yeah, it's a movie I quote a lot. I have a good friend of mine who adores this movie as well, and he can recite the whole movie by heart. So, just out of nowhere will bust out his best William Wallace impression and start quoting the film. But yeah, it has everything you want. This is sort of a lost genre. The whole historical epic. It's kind of been replaced with, the superhero film, or the big, franchise, whatever, IP is out there. You would see something like this if it came out today, probably as a Netflix series, yeah, or a lower budget sort of deal, more focusing more on the drama than the action. I would say.
It's also it was sort of the beginning of a bunch of things, like the beginning of the epic battles, the in the midst of it, epic battles, and the Battle of Stirling Bridge was one of those. It's also began a whole genre of Scottish themed movies and TV shows and all about like the Scottish spirit. And in fact, I remember reading how this movie created some of the politics of Scottish independence in the 90s in the UK. So it started a lot of things, as well as sort of was the peak of certain things. Mike, how about you? What are your feelings about Braveheart?
Well, if you remember, this movie came out in the heart of our Steubenville time. I was a year away from starting school in 96, and you left about a year and a half earlier or so.
I left in
94?
No, I left in 96. I got my bachelor's in 94, but I left in 96.
Okay, you left in 96. So you came. They couldn't have both of us there at the same time, but
too much awesome in one place.
Yeah, and I was watching Gibson talk about how the movie was a bigger hit in VHS and eventually DVD than it was in the theaters. And, I guess I have to agree, because I pretty much wore out my original VHS copy and then had the DVD, and I would make, the old mixtapes, but it would be all Braveheart music. And then I would mix in. I even had this one audio CD that had some of the dialogue with the music together.
Yep,
and
I got that.
You got that one. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really loved it. It was the beginning of Gibson's Catholicism coming through in his movies. The Patriot later, you had him talking about I'm paying for my past sins and praying, and having that, just these little inklings, with Braveheart, and then leading up to the early part of the 21st century with the Passion of the Christ when it really came out. So it was just kind of an interesting time. It was his first major directorial. I think he won the Oscar, right? And that was like, wow, he's starring in it. I mean, it wasn't too long before that you were shocked he would try Shakespeare. Like, oh, what, the guy from the
he was the Lethal Weapon guy.
Shakespeare?
Yeah. Right.
And then he did this, and it was like, wow, he's knows what he's doing. So yeah, I definitely, I was actually thinking about that the other day, and it wasn't in relation to Braveheart, but I'm thinking, how many like rewatchable movies are there besides the ones like the superhero ones that were just kind of cool for all their action? But obviously, for me, Star Wars, and I know you guys, you can watch those over and over. But like I used to like to watch the Tom Clancy, like with Harrison Ford movies, with John Ryan. I liked watching those over and over. They have great scenes. The Star Trek movies, a lot of, if you like those, the ones that just like, oh, I love this scene. You mentioned Shawshank. Oh, this is a good scene. And you're wondering what's going to come next. Oh yes, this scene's good too. That's what this is. Every scene, whether it's the humorous dialogue or the action or just some of the really cool like things that Braveheart does throughout the movie, you're like, oh, I love that he did that. I love that he came up with that. It's all very enjoyable, and the music.
Let's talk about the music. Yeah,
the music was just. I was listening. James Horner is second only to John Williams, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
In composers, it's so sad that he's not. He died so young. Because I'm sure he had more in him, but I think this was his best soundtrack. This is just fantastic.
Right. It's up there, yeah.
That line from the movie where his uncle says to him as a young boy, they're playing outlawed tunes on outlawed pipes, and the music is almost like another character in this movie, as it so often is in great movies, because it brings something to it. The frenetic music where they're gathering of the clans, I can hear it in my head, and it's almost discordant and atonal, but it's rising up, and it's like the clans who are discordant and often fought with each other, but when an external enemy came, they rose up together, and just the music adds so much to this movie, and it's so fantastic. And I love the pipes in it, that they bring the pipes into it. Yeah, it is a fantastic. Like you mentioned, I not only have the original soundtrack, I have that second soundtrack that they did because they wanted more money out of us, where you have it with the dialogue at the same time, and it was so worth it. It is awesome.
Yeah, and the sweeping, I don't know what, pan flute or something, with the
right.
big hills of Scotland, and they just have that, because it's like the exciting. I can still hear it. The music where he picks up Murren and in the rain, and then it stops raining, and they're racing away on the horse, and they have that kind of like that exciting. We're getting out their music, but then all of a sudden it's the sweeping hills of Scotland, and they go into that just. I don't know, just hair raising kind of like you just hear it and you're like, oh yeah, that music, that was kind of the major theme. And then there's other ones like the, I think there was some choral in the background. I'm not sure of it, but Longshank's death. I know, the where she's like, death finds us all, and she's whispering into his ears, and that music makes the whole scene so much more intense and awesome.
Oh,
as
right.
it just sets the pace, like the tone, just, as she slowly kind of just gives it to him, and with his last breath, as he can't even speak because he's, coughing so much. There's just so many good. It's not just like one repeated theme over and over again. It's all these different ones that are just so great.
Yeah, no, I like everything you said. This is the first film that I can think of where I had like that Celtic sound, and like you said, with the pipes and the whistles, and it became. I remember this movie probably made it the whole Celtic sound popular, because I remember as a kid, I was a kid when this movie came out. It's probably around the time when the Celtic women, were always on like PBS promoting their concerts. It became like a thing, and I don't know if this movie was the thing.
Yeah, a lot of Scottish stuff.
A lot of Scottish stuff. Yeah. Yep. This movie probably had a lot to do with James Horner specifically. Obviously, had a lot to do with the popularity of that sort of sound in the 90s. Becoming, anything with the word Celtic on it was a bestseller, I think, around that time. So, and it's, to this day, it holds up. And that's just, again, credit to James Horner, because a lot of that Celtic sound now might sound dated, but this sort of, this movie's score definitely holds up, and one that I definitely go back to.
Right. And so much that's been made since that has anything to do with Scotland really refers to this. I mean, whether it's Outlander or it's was it Rob Roy was after this, or even Brave, the Disney animated. I mean,
right.
There are so many callbacks to this movie, including actors who were in both, and so this had a huge cultural impact. Scottish tourism was huge afterwards. They had big numbers of people wanting to go see Scotland afterwards. So yes, I think this movie changed a lot about how people thought of Scotland, thought of Scottish culture, and so great. You mentioned some of the actors. We should go through the cast and talk a little bit about each who's in this movie. Certainly, Mel Gibson decided to be William Wallace because he's the director and he gets to do that. He was, at the time, even he was a little old to be playing the character, frankly, but he pulls it off, and I think he does a good job. Again, as we mentioned, he's coming off of these roles where he's kind of the crazy action hero, and he's a lot less so than of that in this movie. I think he really kind of, as both a director and an actor, he kind of showed, look, I can be a lot more than the guy from Lethal Weapon or Mad Max, that there was more to him than that. And the Shakespeare thing, helped, although that was a bit of a, felt like a bit of a gimmick at the time, but this really cemented his reputation. The rest of the cast is like a who's who of Scottish actors. James Cosmo as Campbell, Brian Cox as Argyle. You had Patrick McGoohan playing Longshanks, Patrick McGoohan was awesome. He was just so evil.
Yeah. He was the perfect, like in Die Hard, he was the perfect counterpoint to Gibson in Braveheart. It was just, you saw him and this is a worthy adversary. His lines were delivered so well and they were so good.
The problem with Scotland is there's too many Scots. Oh man,
that will bring just the kind of people we want.
Right, which evil, awful people. Right, right.
Horrible people. Yeah.
So then you also had Brendan Gleeson, who's from the Gleeson family, who's done the Donald Gleeson and then I should mention Angus McFadden, who plays Robert the Bruce. And has done so many other great things since then. And I'll mention him again in a second because I want to mention the sequel in a bit. And then Sophie Marceau, the French actress playing Princess Isabel. What a great character. One thing we should mention while we're talking about this, I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but this movie is not historically accurate. It's pretty clear. This is a fable. These were real people, William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, King Edward. But none of this actually happened the way it happened.
There is a Scotland,
right?
There is a Scotland and an England, and that's about where it ends.
Yeah, like for instance, there was actually a bridge at the Battle of Stirling Bridge, where there wasn't one in this movie.
Yeah,
but
they just called it the Battle of Stirling in the movie, I think.
Yes, I think they did. Like, that's too much hassle to go find a bridge. Let's just have a battle here in this field. What was I going to say? So you had this great cast of characters, and we've seen these guys and gals show up in other things ever since. You were mentioning to me that Mike, that the girl who played the young Murren, Mary Calvey, is as now grown up, of course, 30 years later, nearly, and she was in what some people call a sequel to this called Robert the Bruce. Came out in 2019. Starring Angus McFadden, who played Robert the Bruce in the original, reprising his role as an older Robert. Let me tell you, that was a great movie. I talked about it on Raising the Bets with Melanie about having watched that recently, and it is a great movie. I mean, it's certainly not the caliber of this. This is lightning in a bottle, but she was in that as well. So it's kind of funny. There was several more Scottish actors who were younger who got to be in a Braveheart movie, so to speak. But yeah, such a great movie. We mentioned that it won a bunch of awards: Best Director, Best Picture, Best Cinematography, a couple others. It was nominated for 10 total, but it didn't kill the box office. It got like 75 million at the box office, which even in 1995 was not a whole lot. But it grew in the telling, kind of like William Wallace. And afterward, people, it became bigger over time, especially once it won the Oscars. Let's get into the movie itself, though. I want to kind of talk about that. We have this beginning. It starts off. It's narrated in the voice of Robert the Bruce, a character. The character of Robert the Bruce, he kind of evolves through this movie, or kind of swings back and forth. The moral heart of this movie, the Scottish heart of the movie, shall we say, is William Wallace. But Bruce is the guy who'll be king. He's the natural hero, in a sense. That's the one you would expect to be the hero of the movie, but he's not. Wallace doesn't want to be king. He just wants to be free. And I think that's one of the ways this movie is set apart. It's not about a guy's fight for power. It's a guy's fight for a principle of freedom and of justice. And he doesn't want power. And there's a certain kind of purity in Wallace's approach to his campaign. You stop squabbling amongst yourselves, he says to the nobles, fight for your countrymen. And there's a black and white nature to his quest. And I wonder, is that really what draws us in? I mean, is that what draws you into this character, this story in this movie?
It's the tragedy of him having to do that. He comes back. He's like, I want to be a farmer. He did his pilgrimage with Uncle Argyle. And he comes back and he wants to marry Murren and be a farmer. And just, he says, I have children, if God willing, and just, live to be a ripe old age. And that's what he wants to do. And he resists, like a lot of the reluctant heroes. And, you could see it, him doing it again in The Patriot. Resists the violence. I've seen it. I don't want to be a part of it. My dad died this way. If it's not necessary, he's grown up. He had his whole kind of coming of age experience in a absent montage, really, where he grew into this heroic figure off screen and comes back mature. And then the crux of it is his, when they force him into, when they take away the one thing he's living for, and it's like, okay, now you poked the bear, now you woke the sleeping giant, now you have William Wallace to deal with because of what you did to his wife. But until then, he wanted nothing to do with fighting the English or anybody else.
It's the crux of that's one of the things I think that appeals to the Scotsmen when they see this is it's not the Scottish being pugnacious toward the English. It's the Scotsmen just wanted to be left alone to live and to raise their families. And it was in this movie that portrayed it, it was the Englishmen who just kept being mean, being awful, just ruining things. Until finally, they just couldn't take it anymore, until finally the English had gone too far. And that scene, I kind of have jumped ahead again. So let's get to that scene in a second. But before we get to that, we have, the William is scarred for life, sort of in a way, as a young boy when the Longshanks betrays the Scottish nobles the first time, and he ends up seeing the result of that, and he sees the the death, the young pages and the nobles hanging. His father says to him before that a line that kind of there's several lines that I feel like are kind of set the theme for the movie, and one of them is his father says to him, "I know you can fight, but it's our wits that make us men." And that's one of the things that sets Wallace apart is he's smart. He's smarter than everybody else. Right up to the end. Right to the end when he knows what's going to happen to him. He knows he's going to get captured and he's going to be tortured and killed. He's smart enough to know that, but yet he has to do it anyway. It's a thing he has to do. So, be smart. And, his father says it. His Uncle Argyle says it. And then, they come back, and he courts Murrin. They get married in secret because her father. They get married in secret because of the prima nocta, because he doesn't want. I want to be careful about how we talk about it, but it's this custom which may or may not actually maybe one of these things that they made up for the movie, but where the local English lord gets the husband's rights of the first night after they're married, and which is an awful thing. It's designed to to make English babies is the way they were thinking about it, and that again strikes at the heart of family. So and that's the I feel like that's another one of those themes is it's about we're trying to save our families, our clan, our home, and we can't save it without getting rid of you, ejecting you from our land. So what do you guys think about that beginning of the movie? And, any thoughts on how they set up the whole premise before he becomes the rebel in the hills?
Yeah, I mean, knowing who, like you mentioned, like knowing that what separates William Wallace from everyone else is he's smarter and he has a lot of charm. I mean, and it shows out there. I mean, a lot of it shows out through his relationship with Mirren, and their scenes together. Like, there's a lot of humor in it. He loves to make her laugh, and doesn't take himself too seriously when he's around her. I think setting up his character and getting to know his personality. I mean, obviously, a lot of it has to do with Mel Gibson being the star. I mean, he kind of naturally has that presence on screen and has that that charm already built in. But since like we mentioned, it's not historically accurate. This is a movie that has these historical figures, but is placing them. They're sort of just telling their own story with kind of lightly broad strokes. Telling you how the Scottish Revolution took place, but the entertainment value comes from William's character, and it's very important that he's established in a way where he's not just like we'll take a movie like Gladiator, any of these costume epics. No one's gonna confuse Russell Crowe's character with someone like William Wallace. Like, Russell Crowe's character, like, don't get me wrong, is charming, but he suffered his tragedy at the beginning of the film, so he's a broken man. William Wallace is, we're watching his tragedy unfold, and it ends, and all of it happens at the end, but this movie works on so many levels, and why it's widely loved, because it starts off on such a great note, even though it's sour because of the state of Scotland. But throughout the film, when you through all his speeches and through all the humor that he throws in, and then the severe violence, this movie is very violent,
right? That's true.
Yeah. we aspire to be like, as a young kid, and when I watch the film, even now, it's like you kind of want to be William Wallace.
Oh, yeah,
you can't help it.
He's heroic.
He really is. And I think it was a lot of the film, watching it now, a lot of it can be seen as a lot of it doesn't hold up. A lot of the elements don't hold up. I think the relationship between him and Mirren is very beautiful, and some of the best scenes are between him and Mirren, but a lot of it is kind of corny, and a lot of the speeches, as epic as they are, can come off as like corny as well, but and silly, maybe a little overacting, but that's part of the beauty of the film as well.
It's part of its time. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. If this film was made today, it would probably be a lot more grounded and more gritty. The film is gritty. I mean, in its sort of cinematography and it's like muddiness,
right.
For the time, it was like, whoa, it was, the violence and the battles were, cutting edge and everything. You watch it now in slow motion DVD and you're like, oh gosh, that's horrible special effects. But, at the time, or you spot the people in the background, they're not really fighting, are they? That kind of stuff. But just real quick on the beginning, I wonder, if the studios or whatever, like, we need to cut out that beginning. This is 3 hours. The theaters aren't going to want to run it. It's going to mess up their whole time slot. And maybe, the fact that they did keep it to practically 3 hours and kept that beginning part in is why it didn't do as well in the box office otherwise. But, how worth it was it? I mean, imagine them just kind of saying, okay, here he is. You built up his depth, as you said, like with what he saw with all those people hanging. That was terrifying. That was like traumatizing. And then his father coming home with this like huge wound in his chest and dead, and he sees him and all that, and then they have him go on this pilgrim. His Uncle Argyle comes, and I'm going to teach you how to be a man, and he's basically just like his dad. I'm going to teach you how to be smart. And he comes back, and if we can bring this up now, the whole flower scene where she gave him that flower as a girl because of his dad dying, and 15 years later, he comes back, and after their date, he hands it to her. I mean, guys, if you have a girl you really like, if you can set this up, it's the Braveheart flower trick is a hit.
It is a long setup.
Just like, oh my, yeah, really long setup. I mean, it was just beautifully done, and no one had a clue because it was just, she gave him a flower. Okay, that's cute. Like he really cared, but he kept it, and it meant something to him, and he gave it back to her, and it was like, if she hadn't fallen in love with him already, click, that was it. She was like, hook, line, and sinker. She looked at him like, that's my knight in shining armor. That's all there is to it. And the music, of course, was soaring, throughout that whole thing. So, they really, by the time that happened, and you're like, this guy is cool. He can woo the girl that he wants. He's obviously smart, and you have a inkling he probably can fight, although we haven't really seen that yet. But when you do, I think the setup was so worth it. Gave him so much depth, and you really felt like you had a lot of respect for this character by the time the real story begins with the war and everything.
Yeah, and it also, I just wanted to add one more thing. Yeah, in the beginning also, it foreshadows what's going to happen later when, he sees like the Longshank's betrayal, and then the betrayal that happens to him, at the end of the film. It's cliche. It's sort of a cliche thing to do in storytelling, but it sets that up really well.
Yeah, and in fact, there's that one ambush in the middle where they try to set him up that he avoids. He sees it coming, which emphasizes how at the end he knows that it's an ambush, that it's a betrayal, but he's got to go anyway because it's just the thing he's got to do. Yeah. I want to mention about the courtship and marriage with Mirren in secret, that was a thing in the Middle Ages, that couples would go off into the woods and they would have a sympathetic priest who would marry them. And there actually had to be some canon law put out about people doing all these secret marriages, because people are people, and young people especially are young people, and are in the throes of love and in admiration for one another, and let's just say hormones run high, and so they want to do the right thing, and so they end up getting married in secret, which is fine. You know, they're doing the right thing in that case, but you know, it became a little bit out of hand. Let's just say it was causing some chaos. But it was a thing that people would sometimes, you know, they would go off and get married in secret. And in this case, they did the hand fasting thing where they tied the hand together, which was a thing in certain cultures. So the death of Murin is what precipitates the whole rebellion. It's the one girl who dies at the hands of the brutal lord who doesn't even want to hear her side of the story. He just, you know, so casually, almost just coldly kills her. And it's when Wallace comes back to exact his revenge, what strikes me in that is not that he's raging like Jason Statham coming in to take out the bad guys in revenge. You know, that's how Jason Statham would be in a movie. He's cold. He's implacable. His face is completely like shut down inside.
He's like the Terminator.
Yeah, it's robotic. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It is the way he comes in and cannot be stopped. That's the thing that really gets me at that scene, and you know, and from that point, you know, it could be okay. I did this thing. You guys don't have to suffer for it. But it's all the other Klansmen coming in and saying, no, you know. We heard you did this thing. We're in. You know, it's like I didn't do this to start a rebellion, but it doesn't matter. And it's, you know, on the one hand, in a cliched movie, he could go off and say, no, I'm not. I reject you're trying to make me a rebel leader. But instead, he embraces the idea of, okay, if we're going to do this, we're doing this for freedom, for justice, for Scotland, and that's where he goes with it. I kind of like that they do it that way.
And because he thinks Mullen sees him. Yes. I forget the name of his friend. Hamish?
Hamish.
Hamish. Yeah. That's another great character. And, you know, with that scene with him, like, hitting him with the pebble in his head and knocking him over and everything, it was a great setup when he came back. But, you know, just to fast forward, as long as we're talking about his motives, he's like, you're doing this because you think she sees you, you know, and that makes him mad and he punches him, you know, but, you know, that's part of it. He wasn't there to save her. So he's got to continually show his love for her by what he's doing. And that probably in the most difficult times motivates him the most.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the reasons why when he meets Princess Isabel, like he sees something in her, like there's a strength and independence, but also something of a victim of the English king, and that reminds him of Murin a little bit, and I think there's an element of that in there. You know, the French princess, the Scottish Klansmen both have things against the English king a little bit. And of course, another guy who has something against the English king is Stephen the Irishman, one of my favorite characters. The Almighty has sent me to watch your back, he says. It's just a great character, and you know he's foul mouthed, but he talks about it's my island, and you're like, oh, Ireland is your island, typical Irishman, overblown ego. But in the end, he actually does get the Irish regiment to switch sides in the middle of the battle. You know, that was such a fantastic moment. You know, they rush at each other and they stop them and roll. Hey, how you doing? You know, McMurray.
An Irishman is forced to talk to the Almighty. Yes. No one else is his equal. Oh man, that was so great in the middle of that. That was fantastic. I know. I didn't trust him. He wasn't right in the head. I mean, there's so many great quotes from him.
He has a lot of great
which
lines.
You can't say.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And so, you know, while we're talking about battles and the Battle of Stirling Bridge, the capture of York, the inspirational speech, you can take our lives, but you can't take our freedom. I mean, it's stirring. It stirs you now when you see it. You know, it gives you goosebumps. That idea of, you know, why would a man stand in a line with arrows flying at you, horses running at you, you know, seeing people butchered in a line in front of you? Why would you willingly run into that? What motivates a man to go into battle for something like that? You know, you're not going to die, as the soldier says. I'm not going to die so this, you know, Scottish noble gets a couple more acres of land. like in Scotland, in England or something, I'm going to go home and I'll live to see another day. But Wallace, gives them a reason to fight and maybe die, which is, you could give up your life, but they can't take away your freedom that you've earned that Scotland earns by the blood on this field. And there's something in me as a man where I want to say yes. Like, I want to, if I have to die for something, I want to die for something noble and something that is for others. I mean, that's a Christian impulse, for one thing. It's what Christ did. He died for others. He died to save us. He died to give us freedom from sin, not, worldly freedom like in this case, but there's something in us that wants to fight and strive and sacrifice for others, for the sake of others, because it's noble. And I think that's one of the reasons why that speech and that scene really calls us on and really it inspires me anyway.
Yeah, there's a sense there where, I'm not. You're not going to make me into the coward who's going to be subject to your thumb, over my head and your rules, and I just I jump when you say jump and I sit when you say sit, but at least I get to live. No, I'm going to go kicking and screaming, and you're either going to lose or you're going to not have me because you'll have to kill me. And that's, we innately know that is more virtuous, that is more courageous, that is more godlike, that of the dignity we are given than to, bow down to the one who is stronger because you're afraid. It's just, that, and that's, so he, like you said, Dom, he appealed to, the deep down, who they were. He had to remind them of it. And the way he delivers it and the number of memes and all the other things that have been out with that speech and everything like that,
Yes.
But when he first did it, you were just like, whoa, I mean,
Right.
And I don't even know, he did some cabla, Gaelic or Scottish, whatever, battle cry at the end when he raised up his sword and he's running, down, and he has that iconic paint on his head and everything. And, then he's like, okay, we got to go pick a fight, or did the pick a fight happen first or second? I think it happened first.
That happened first. Yeah. Where you going? I'm going to pick a fight.
Yeah. And then he comes back, he slaps his horse and he kneels down for the last rites and let's go.
Yes.
But yeah,
I love that scene of the general absolution where the priests are walking along the line, giving them absolution before the battle.
And they're going to get out
fantastic.
of there.
And
then they come
later
along
on,
later to drag him off the field.
Yeah, they're dragging them off. Oh my gosh, I'm glad he put those little details in. I really think that was awesome that he put it in. That speech, it's not nearly the same quality. Sorry to the screenwriter, but it reminds me a little of the St. Christmas Day speech in Shakespeare's Henry V. Any man who lay abed in England years from now would, give his arm to be with us here on the. I'm sorry, I'm butchering Shakespeare, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I didn't look it up ahead of time. But he would give everything to be here with us for one moment on this field, one moment, and it's that same sort of thing.
Once more unto the breach.
Right. Another great line.
But William Wallace's speech was better than the president's on Independence Day. It did eclipse that.
Yes, that was better than the Independence Day speech.
So it's very close, but yeah,
I think he got him. I think that's also like a 95-ish film. I'm not sure.
I think one of the other things that made this so great is it's not about the nobles and the Scottish nobles. Like, Wallace isn't fighting for them. They're all squabbling over who gets to take the Scottish throne, and he basically tells them, you think the people of this nation exist to provide you with position, but your position exists to provide these people with freedom. And I love that vision of this is what being a nobleman is about. Being an aristocracy is, it's not to lord it over others. You exist to take care of these people, to give them the security and freedom that they deserve by right of human right. Given by God. So I really, again, there's these elements that come out in this movie that just resonate with me one after another.
Was he the script, like part of the script writing Gibson?
Who's that?
Or was Gibson
the screenwriter? No, Randall Wallace.
Randall Wallace, who's a descendant.
Yeah, because that was a book that they adapted to.
It was based on something called The Wallace, a poem from the 1500s or 1400s by someone called Blind Harry, which is awesome. And which the poem itself was, again, not very accurate, but it's a tall tale. But and then Randall Wallace adapted it from that. So, and this was his first major success, I think.
It's interesting when with some of the stuff I was watching with the behind the scenes, Wallace Gibson and the editor were chatting back and forth about this, and the script came up, and they're like, they wanted to know the editor, do you follow the script? And he's like, well, I don't, I mean, if there's dialogue, I make sure it's in there, but I'm not sitting here and checking the script to make sure everything, And Gibson's like, yeah, the script kind of, you have the script and then you forget about it and you make the movie. It's like everyone knows their lines, we do it. But and it made me think there's probably I'm sure they had their storyboards or whatever, but a lot of the wonder what lines of those were ones that they thought up like then and there, or was it part of the original script? Some of those iconic lines, like the one you said about the nobles. That's such a big part of the philosophy of Wallace.
By the way, speaking of Randall Wallace, the scriptwriter, he went on to write Pearl Harbor, which got a bad movie. It was not a great movie. It was it actually won a Raspberry Award for worst screenplay.
Yeah, but the fight, but the scene of the ships was great. The attack on Pearl Harbor was awesome. Watch it for that and ignore the rest.
That is worth watching. Yeah, but he also wrote We Were Soldiers, which is another great Mel Gibson movie. Yeah. And get this, he's writing the screenplay for The Resurrection of the Christ, which is the sequel, don't you know, to The Passion of the Christ, which is kind of a given
really?
There, I guess.
Is there a prequel?
Right. Well, wait till you see the prequel to The Passion of the Christ.
Whoa! The backstory is amazing.
The origin story of Jesus is going to shock you. No, sorry. No, but he wrote the screenplay for The Resurrection of the Christ, which is interesting that he didn't have anything to do with The Passion of the Christ, but he was on so I just thought that was interesting little tidbit that I just saw.
As long as he doesn't weave in a ridiculous love triangle into the resurrection.
Oh, please, yes. I think Mel will take care of that for us. Thank you. So, some of the other parts here, it's interesting how often they incorporate this idea of Wallace dreaming of the dead. He has these dreams about his father, about Murren, about those who've died, who he's loved, and they spur him on. They call him on to further, to keep going on, to keep continuing on in his mission, his quest to bring freedom to Scotland. And I thought that was an interesting device that they used. That it was the dead who inspired him, those that he had lost, because he had so much loss in his life. His mother was gone before the movie started, and his father and brother died at the beginning. Murren dies, his friends. I just think that's an interesting device that they use there.
You wonder how, Catholic Christian it is. He goes on pilgrimage. He learns about his faith from his uncle, and he comes back and he has this respect for those who've gone before him. Like they're not gone. He thinks Murren sees him, so he thinks she's in heaven. So you have those aspects of spirituality there, and it certainly is biblical to be inspired or moved or get messages through dreams, so not that they were like dreams from or messages from God, but still. So you wonder how much of that all played into the thought process. Yeah.
It feels like it.
Yeah, and a big theme of this film is, father-son relationships and, both, literal and figurative. We see in the beginning of the movie, William Wallace and his father, and we see Robert the Bruce with his, and you see kind of, William Wallace being a father to, Robert the Bruce, and William Wallace has like this, he has an idea of a great idea of how to be a good father. And he does so much to shape Robert the Bruce. And then even though he betrays him, William still forgives him and still believes in him, even after all that. it's that has to do with his faith. I mean, a big part of that has to do with his faith, and because he sees the bigger picture. I mean, he's obviously willing to die, for freedom, because he sees the bigger picture. He's like, yeah, I know I'm gonna die. I know, like, we're not gonna win this battle, but people are gonna be inspired by what's happening. It's like that. It's like 300, right? Where they all know they're outnumbered and the Persians are gonna defeat them, but then they're gonna inspire an even bigger army. Talk about a movie that's not historically accurate, but
right. Oh yeah.
the general story is there. It's something that can only be stirred up in him, knowing that there's an afterlife and knowing that that God has a hand in this, and that if he just does what's just and right, then everything else will fall into place.
And then you have that biblical imagery of Bruce's father, who's got leprosy. So you have the imagery of this guy's soul just decrepit because he's a coward. It's that to compromise is to be noble. What? It's like, right. He has it all backwards. He's the anti-Wallace in the whole thing. And, in the beginning, you could kind of see that while Robert is kind of like, okay, Dad, I guess so. But, towards the end, he's like, man, you're just full of it. I mean, you have been leading me astray this whole time. And, I don't want anything to do with you. But that was a great, juxtaposed. You got Wallace with his courage that's going to lead him to death. But this other guy's just rotting slowly in his cowardice.
Well, it's the visualization of the great line: every man dies, not every man truly lives. And the elder Bruce is dying. He's, as you said, literally rotting away. Whereas Wallace dies, but he has truly lived. By the time he dies, he has truly lived a complete life, and because he's lived out his mission. So yeah, the thing I like about this is Wallace is sort of a Christ figure, and Bruce is a Peter figure. He's the future leader, who betrays the man of ideal and principle, and when he repents of it. He's not Judas, he's Peter. He repents of it. He says to his father, as he, his realization as he walks through the bodies of all his countrymen on the battlefield: I want to believe as he does. I will never be on the wrong side again. That what a
I
great
don't want to
line.
lose heart.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was such a great moment that it would be easy for the Bruce to be the bad guy in this movie, but he turns out to be the good guy at the end. And I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, it was kind of a redemption story for him.
Yes, it was a redemption story for him.
Yeah, and William, again, taught him. There's that line where he says, "Men don't follow titles. They follow courage, and if you can lead these people, then they'll follow. They'll follow you. But you have to show that courage. It's not enough to just, oh, you're the son of such and such, and you have this power or whatever. Like, you have to have these qualities, and that's again the William Wallace being more of a father to Robert the Bruce than his own father, who was a coward and convinced him to betray him. It just shows like how William's not only sacrifice, but his mentoring of Robert the Bruce, affects the history of the Scottish Revolution, and this not so historically accurate movie again, but yeah, it just shows how powerful that can be.
You can also taste like Wallace is like, if you would just lead them. I mean, he's like, you guys are so close. If you would just figure out that if you would get your heads out of your know-what and just lead them, they would follow you anywhere. And, and he's just so frustrated. He's like, stop knighting me and getting all, and do something. You get to the point where he starts taking out the nobles.
Right. That was a very big scene. Yeah. When he rides the horse into the guy's bedroom.
And in case, I don't know if you're, the different cat. I know there's so many people, but I got to mention his big friend's dad.
Campbell.
I don't know
Hamish
if he even has a
Hamish is
name.
that?
Yeah.
Hamish's dad.
Yeah. James Cosmo. Yeah.
He's like, I mean, he's proud of his son, but he also so admires, like, you know, Wallace, and that's like he's just all ready. And you think you're introduced to him. He's shot with an arrow, and he holds up the bridge in the beginning when they're avenging Murren, and they just stop them from killing him as he's just like staying there. And,
right.
You know, and they're like, you know, I'll hold. You pull it out. I'll hold him down. No, you pull it out. I'll hold him down. When he's got the arrow. No, you pull it out. I'll hold him down. Or, I don't know what it is, or maybe it's the sea. Oh no, they had to cauterize it. That's what it was.
Yes, they were cauterizing
it. Whoever cauterized the wound got a big smack in the face.
That's right.
He died so happy.
Yes,
he's like, I lived long enough, you know, to see you become the man you are. You know, like,
right.
Again, just a great father figure.
He was an awesome figure of a man who obviously lived his life that way the whole time.
Right.
And you know, he still has plenty left in him, you know, kind of scrappy old guy.
Yeah, James Cosmo ends up, he actually plays Robert Bruce the Senior in the Netflix movie Outlaw King, which was about Robert the Bruce. So he you know, he's
cool.
all around this this story. So I want to kind of get to the ending where Wallace is executed. And it's such a, you know, it is, you know, it's like a crucifixion. He's laid out like a cross on the execution block. And it's interesting. He sort of fixates on the face of a child in the crowd during his execution. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Why do you think he made that choice to have Wallace fixating on the child? I wonder if it symbolizes, you know, his lost future with Murren and children, or the innocence of, you know, of the Scottish children, or.
I mean, this is who he's doing it for.
Right.
You know, it's not for him. It's certainly not for Murren or a lot of his friends that have died and probably won't see any freedom. But he's looking at the children of Scotland who this is for. I mean, that would be the most, one of the most logical thoughts. I mean, it's also just purity and innocence and beauty that he can look at during this really ugly, painful, horrible moment. But, you know, I think he got both of those things there.
Yeah, he probably, you took the words right out of my mouth. And the only thing
That's why I struggled to go first. So I can credit for it.
Yeah. But yeah, the other thing I'll say is, like, he's probably thinking of, obviously, like you mentioned, you know, he's doing it for this child, but this child is also about, like he did when he was a child. He's about to witness some atrocity right now, you know, and he's probably thinking about how it's going to affect him. And, you know, at least this time, he's hoping that this child is seeing someone who did it for the right reasons and will hopefully, you know, is doing it so he won't have to endure it. And if he has to, you know, when he is of age, if he has to ever fight for his country, that, you know, he'll be inspired by him in some way.
Yes, I think that's a good point. That the child, you know, the cycle of violence, you know, that the child is seeing, but maybe that if Wallace dies well, he inspires, you know, and he does die well. I mean, everyone is rooting for him to cry out mercy in the face of the torture, including the crowd who was just a few minutes ago jeering at him and, you know, wanting the worst for him. They're like, okay, at this point, dude, just cry for mercy. Yeah,
his two good friends are in the crowd hiding, and they're saying mercy. And he also, similar to Christ, he spit out the drug that the princess came and got him. You know, he drank it and pretend, but he spit it out just like Christ, you know, wouldn't take any painkillers, so to speak.
Yep, the hyssop
on the cross.
Yep, that's true.
Because he didn't want to be weakened. I had a whisper about me. They're going to try to break me. They can't break me. So I have to make sure I'm all up. You know, it's all mental. It's all up here. I can't be weak.
He had to make sure that he could die well, and died, you know, with on his lips his highest principle, which was freedom. You know, and the fact that Longshanks was dying at the very same moment, having just been told by Princess Isabel that his heir is not going to be the child of his son, but of William Wallace, which is whether that's true or not, she's really turning the screw at that point at the end.
Well, I think considering her husband, if she's pregnant, it's probably true.
Right, exactly.
They made it pretty clear that she was not going to have a child through his son.
Yes,
and that was it's interesting too, and you don't how they depicted the son. You wouldn't get away with that in today's movie culture.
Oh no.
They're painting them that way, and it not necessarily should have. But they did use, and it's not the first time it's been used to have a homosexual character be the bad, a sign of the weakness or whatever of the character, right or wrong. That's what they did. But I'm interesting, if I could ask a question, do you, we mentioned the Gladiator, and one of the things that was mentioned in the backstory or the, afterwards in the Gladiator is why the Gladiator character didn't get together with the daughter of the emperor, the brother of the emperor, or the sister, excuse me, because they had this closeness. And Crow's response was, you're not going to be on your way to avenge your wife and son and have a little nookie on the way. It's just, you just don't do that. But Braveheart sort of, he did, and it served that ending where she could say, well, Wallace is going to be on the throne.
Yes.
Was it worth it? To do that, you know what I mean? Like, was it worth his, because it kind of took away, like, okay, do you, doing that? I don't know. I would try to rectify the whole thing.
I think it was a little disappointing because he was otherwise mostly a man of virtue, that he would, that in that instance that he would, succumb to that sort of temptation, and that Murren's memory, I agree. Her memory should be enough to get him to, for him to be single focused on his goal. And this sort of is a distraction, but you're right. The distraction was this was all a setup for that line at the end. I don't know that it's right. I don't know that I would make that same choice. No. How about you, Andrew? What do you think?
It wasn't just because they did serve the choice, but what do you think, Andy?
I agree. I think, it's one of the elements of the film that, didn't need to be there. And I don't think it added anything to it, other than that payoff at the end, if you want to call it a payoff. But yeah, I agree with that aspect. If anything, it shows his humanity, in a way, that, it doesn't matter, what you've gone through, men will be faced with temptations like that. And, at least, it didn't have like dampen his character, and that's in any sort of way, is this
not overall, it didn't help,
right.
But it didn't overall, it didn't ruin it. It just was kind of a blip on an otherwise, very strong man. Mm-hmm. Sure, you could say he was more brutal in certain ways than he needed to be if you want to talk about virtue, but he was definitely a man of integrity and courage. Men of integrity and courage don't do that. So it was, a little break, but at the same time, nobody's perfect. So I just wanted to know what you guys thought of that.
It's good to bring that up. So, he dies as Longshanks dies. So in a way, he sort of wins in that, that he wins by he can yell freedom while Longshanks has been silenced through his illness, and dies, yes. Strangling in his own bed, whereas Wallace dies crying out freedom. So I think there's an interesting parallelism there. But his death then inspires the Scotsman and inspires the Bruce to lead them. And then we get the ending voiceover, in the year of our Lord, 1314, patriots of Scotland, starving and outnumbered, charged the fields of Bannockburn. They fought like warrior poets. They fought like Scotsmen and won their freedom. Which again is a little historically inaccurate, but it's an inspiring line and an inspiring way to end this movie. What do you guys think of in general, the movie, or any other notes you wanted to bring up at this point in our discussion? Anything left to say?
Well, one of the things that, I mean, there's just so much, and we've said so much, and there's so much we left out, when you talk about a 3-hour movie over a span of a little over an hour. But it is difficult to watch the further along you get. I mean, it's, you kind of have that first big disappointment when Murren is murdered, and then you're building up. He's winning battle after battle after battle. He sacks York. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And then he gets betrayed, and the movie takes this darker turn where he eventually gets captured. And
that's true.
That's not as much fun to watch. It's a great. I mean, it doesn't take away from the depth or the quality of the movie by any means, but you're kind of like, as you're doing this, you know what's going to happen. I guess almost like a Christ-like figure. When you're watching and thinking about Jesus's passion, there's always this kind of like, I kind of wish he would have come down from the cross and told all those people what for, but he can't. He's got to go through with this to the end with them thinking that he's not who he says he was. That's why he's who he is. And to watch Wallace go through it is a similar thing. You want him to win in the more the way men think, and not the way God thinks. You want him to kill the bad guy at the end, and I'm victorious and I'm great and I got the girl and everything's wonderful. But he didn't. He sacrificed everything to see what he wanted, to get to what he wanted. And that is, it's good to watch, but it's not, I always usually when I watch the movie, once we get to like the Irishman meeting in the middle and they're all like, okay, we're going to switch sides. I'm like, okay, now the movie kind of turns from here.
Right.
They don't do the right thing. They betray him. Robert the Bruce is the guy who was, on the bad side, and it goes downhill. But up until then, it's kind of fun. And that's just an interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting aspect of the movie, the way it kind of crescendos and then goes downhill, but it has to. That's just, and he, like you said all along, he knew it. He knew he wasn't exactly going to defeat England, but he was going to inspire.
Yeah, I'll say, again, I mentioned in the beginning that the way this film ages, you realize a lot of the, at least in my opinion, it's, a lot of it's silly, a lot, back watching when I was younger, it was a lot more like inspirational and like you're more in awe of like what you're watching. And again, you want to be William Wallace. A lot of that is still there, but again, watching it now, I think it's more, it would be hard for me to just like pop it in and watch it from beginning to end. I don't find myself being tempted to do that. But again, if I see it streaming, maybe I'll watch a scene. Maybe I'll, if it comes, a scene shows up on my YouTube, recommended playlist, I'll definitely spark it up. But the effect that it's had on me is there. I mean, again, those lines, those speeches are embedded in my memory. I can always recite them, and the appreciation again for the score, for the epic filmmaking. Again, Mel Gibson, no matter what you think of him, is really a brilliant director. And he has a gift, not only in front of the screen, but behind the screen. This film is, what a lot of people would say, is his overall best. I think that, again, the silliness I was mentioning is part of the movie's charm, and it's part of like why we can love it. And it's one thing I noticed like more and more is like how blue his eyes are.
Yes. Yeah,
it's almost like ridiculous that someone like as like hardcore as he is like so like just so handsome and the sun's just glistening on the sides.
Right.
That again, it's mid-90s Hollywood epic. Like it has all those qualities. So we can forgive it for that. but yeah, I think it's one of those films that'll always be in pop culture. It'll always like be referenced and parodied forever, and everyone will get the reference. You know, maybe the younger kids now won't, but like they'll be able to put two and two together and be like, oh yeah, it's that film with that crazy Mel Gibson guy, or you know, that my parents like. It's yeah, it will definitely stand the test of time, and I think that, you know, no one knew. I mean, I'm pretty sure like the real story of William Wallace, or William Wallace as a historical figure in general. Pretty sure before this movie came out, no one knew who William Wallace was. Yeah, I don't think that was you know, that was ever you know, Scottish history was ever a thing outside of Scotland. So I think we can give the film credit for that, you know, for giving the historical inaccuracies, at least shining a light on Scottish history. And yeah, I think that whenever a film like this is remembered, like for me at least, I always like miss this type of film, because again, like I talked about earlier, we don't really get this type of film anymore. And you know, maybe Hollywood's always changing, so maybe that'll change one day. But yeah, I would love to see more historical epics like this, you know, whether it's on streaming or not. It'd be nice to see like you know, a big name actor and with a big budget, you know, to tell a nice, you know, because history has a lot of stories to tell and that haven't been told. So it'd be nice to see that again.
I think Troy is probably what did it in the that sort of sword and sandals epic.
Right. Yeah.
But it'll be back.
No. I'm sure. Might in a different medium maybe, but yeah, I hope that we can get one that we can like look at and be like, wow, this might be one of the best movies I've ever seen.
You know, speaking of Troy, Mel Gibson wanted Brad Pitt to play William Wallace, which would have been
those blue eyes, man.
Very different movie. It would have been.
Those blue eyes.
Oh man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I am mesmerized by Gibson as an actor. I no matter. I mean, and his older stuff I like better. From this point on, you know, whether it's Patriot or just some of the other crazy films he's done since he's done The Passion, you know, I just think he's just great. Yeah, and his acting is just so spot on. And I love to watch it. So I'm so glad Brad Pitt.
We'll have to put The Patriot on our list of future episodes of Secrets of Movies, because that is another one of my favorites. So good.
Great film.
All right. Yeah, I'll finish up by saying that this holds a place in my heart, as you know, I saw it at a particular time in my life that was very formative, and it spoke to me at that time, and called me to certain virtues and ways of thinking about the world around me, and I really am grateful for this movie. That, you know, it's got its flaws, definitely, as we mentioned. But there's so much about this movie that I love. I haven't watched it in many years until I watched it for this recording, and I'm glad I did. I forgot how long it was. I had to do it over 2 nights. But yeah, it's such a great movie, and I'm glad that Scotland gets its due. That Scotland got the Scottish culture, which I love, has gotten the attention it deserves because of this movie, and we need more Scottish stuff, definitely. So we'll end it with that.
Besides the guys in the elevator trying to go to floor 11, have you seen that one?
Oh my gosh, with the voice activated elevator, that is hysterical. Oh, I love that one. That was so funny.
We could do a whole thing on that one.
Yes, we could do a whole episode.
11.
Oh yes, Scottish Siri. That would be very funny. All right, let's wrap it up before we get into all of that. So I want to take a moment first to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Movies and TV shows, including Tony G, Austin L, Samuel E, Edward R, not the Longshanks, and Derek M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of Braveheart? Do you love it? Is it a movie that you knew? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. And if there's a movie or TV show you want us to talk about, let us know. Drop us a line there and tell us, give us your ideas of what we should be talking about on this show. Until next time, Mike Denz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Braveheart.
The Lord said he could get me out of this mess, but he's pretty sure. Well,
thank you for not finishing that. Andrew Hermiz, thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest. And remember, freedom!
Freedom!
You can take our wives, but you can't take our freedom.